She had scrubbed floors in Seoul for 2 years without a single person looking her in the eye. That was fine. Adiz had not come to Korea to be seen, she had come to survive. But on the night of the rainstorm, when she found the old man collapsed against the wall of the Gangnam office tower she cleaned every Tuesday, something in her chest moved faster than her legs. She did not know his name. She did not know his face. She only knew that he was shaking, that his lips were pale, and that nobody else on that street was stopping. So she stopped. She pulled his arm over her shoulder, helped him inside, and stayed with him until color returned to his cheeks. It was a small act. A quiet act. The kind that leaves no record. Or so she believed. What Adiz did not know, what she could not have known, was that the frail old man whose hand she held that rainy night in Seoul was Park Junho. And in certain circles that name was spoken only in whispers. The office tower on Tehran RO was never fully quiet, not even at midnight. The elevators hummed. The air conditioning clicked on and off in a rhythm that Adiz had memorized after the first 3 weeks. The fluorescent lights on the 16th floor buzzed faintly over the gray tiles she was mopping, and beyond the floor-to-ceiling windows, the lights of Gangnam spread out like a fallen sky. She did not find it beautiful anymore. She had found it beautiful once on her first week, when she would stop at the windows and stand there for a moment before catching herself. Now she just mopped. She was 28 years old, from Enugu, Nigeria, and she had a degree in biochemistry that nobody in Seoul had ever asked to see. Her papers were clean, her work visa legitimate, her Korean good enough to read cleaning schedules and apologize to executives who walked through her wet floors without looking down. She worked nights. Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Saturday. 4 nights a week for a cleaning company called Han Clean Services, and on the remaining days she took shifts at a small laundry near Sindang Station. She sent money home every month, a fixed amount, before she allowed herself to eat properly. Her mother was sick. The treatment was not cheap. That was the whole equation. That Tuesday night began like every other. She clocked in at 9:30, collected her cart, rode the service elevator to the 16th floor. She moved through the glass-walled offices, spraying and wiping, emptying bins, straightening chairs nobody had pushed back improperly. By 11:15 she was done and had ridden the elevator back down to the ground floor to return her cart and sign out. The rain had started while she was upstairs. She stood at the building's side entrance, the service entrance, and looked out at the street, calculating whether to walk to the bus stop quickly or wait. The rain was hard and cold, the kind that came in sideways. She decided to wait. She leaned against the wall just inside the doorway and scrolled through her phone, checking a message from her younger sister about their mother's next hospital appointment. She almost missed him. The man was sitting on the low concrete step just outside the building service door, hunched forward, one hand pressed flat against the wet ground as if he was trying to push himself upright and could not manage it. He was old, she could see that even in the dim light. His suit was expensive but soaked through. His gray hair was plastered to his forehead. He was breathing in short, uneven pulls, and his lips, when he turned slightly at the sound of her footstep on the threshold, had a color that frightened her. She did not hesitate. "Ajiasi," she said, using the Korean word for older man, and she was already crouching beside him, her phone in her pocket. "Ajiasi, are you all right? Can you stand?" He looked at her. His eyes were sharp, she noticed that immediately, not confused, not glassy. Just exhausted and in pain. He said something in Korean that she caught only half of, something about being fine, and then his hand slipped on the wet concrete and he lurched forward. She caught him by the arm without thinking, steadying him with her whole body. "You are not fine," she said, firmly and without apology. "Come inside." She helped him up. He was heavier than he looked, and he resisted slightly at first, a proud man's instinct, but when they were both standing and she had his arm over her shoulder, he let her lead him back through the service door and into the dry ground floor corridor. She sat him on the bench near the cleaning supply lockers. She went to her bag, retrieved a small flask of warm tea she always carried, and handed it to him. She called emergency services, gave the address, and then she sat beside him and watched him breathe. "You don't have to stay," he said. His voice was low and controlled, and his Korean was very precise, the kind she associated with older educated men. "I know," she said. "I'm staying anyway." He looked at her for a moment. Something passed across his face that she could not read. "What is your name?" he asked. "Adiz," she said. He repeated it carefully, getting the syllables right. Then he closed his eyes and leaned back against the wall, and he did not speak again until the ambulance arrived. She gave the paramedics the information she had, which was very little. She had found him outside, he had been conscious the whole time, she did not know if he had any medical conditions. She signed nothing. She left no number. The paramedics were professional and swift, and within 4 minutes of their arrival they had him on a stretcher and were moving toward the doors. She stood and watched them go. Then she picked up her bag, buttoned her coat, and walked out into the rain to catch the last bus home. She told no one about it. It was not the kind of thing she would tell. It had been an ordinary act of human decency, and she believed, as she always had, that ordinary acts of human decency required no audience. She was wrong about one thing, though. She had thought no one was watching. 3 days passed without incident. On Friday evening, Adiz was at the laundry near Sindang, folding linen with the slow precision that came from doing the same motion hundreds of times, when her phone buzzed with an unknown number. She let it ring. It buzzed again. She answered. "Is this Adiz Okoye?" The voice was young, male, Korean, formal. "Yes. My name is Han Suk. I work for Mr. Park Junho. He would like to speak with you." She held the folded sheet in both hands and did not move for a moment. "I don't know a Mr. Park," she said. "You helped him on Tuesday night," the man said. "Outside the building on Tehran RO. He would like to thank you in person. I can arrange a car." She thought about this. "He is all right?" she asked. "He is recovering. He would like to meet you. Tomorrow morning, if that is convenient." She almost said no. She almost said thank you and no. But something, she would later think it was simply the same instinct that had made her stop on Tuesday, made her say yes. The car came the next morning, a black sedan, clean and quiet, driven by a man in a gray suit who said nothing to her the entire ride. They drove south through the city and eventually turned into a neighborhood she did not recognize, where the streets were wide and quiet and lined with trees, and the houses sat far back behind walls and iron gates. The car stopped before a gate that opened as they approached. They drove up a gravel path to a house that was not large by the standards of the neighborhood but was precise and serious in its architecture, the way buildings are serious when they belong to people who have chosen understatement deliberately. She was led inside by Han Suk, a neat young man in his late 20s who gave her tea without asking and then left her in a sitting room that had a view of a stone garden. She sat and waited. The room was quiet. On a low table near the window was a single framed photograph, a younger version of the man she had helped, standing beside a woman and 2 teenage boys, all of them looking at the camera with the careful expressions of people who had been told to smile and could not quite manage it. Then the old man came in. He was dressed now in plain dark clothes, moving with a walking stick she had not seen him use before. His face, in daylight, was deeply lined but composed, the face of a man who had spent a long time making sure very little showed on it. He sat across from her and looked at her with the same sharp eyes she remembered from the rain. "You didn't leave your name," he said. "It took my people 2 days to find you." "I didn't think it mattered," she said. "It mattered to me." He paused. "Do you know who I am?" "Han Suk called you Mr. Park Junho," she said. "I don't know more than that." Something shifted at the edge of his mouth. It was not quite a smile. "That is probably healthy," he said. "How long have you been in Seoul?" 2 years, she said. 3 months. "And before that?" "Enugu, Nigeria. I studied biochemistry." He nodded slowly. "And now you clean offices." It was not said unkindly, but she looked at him steadily. "Yes." "Why?" "My mother is ill. My salary covers her treatment and leaves something for my family." She did not offer this as an explanation or an apology. She said it the way she said everything, as a fact, cleanly. He was quiet for a moment. "What is her condition?" She told him. "Kidney disease, stage 3, managed for now but requiring consistent medication and quarterly hospital reviews that were beyond what her family in Enugu could afford without her support." She watched him listen. His face did not perform sympathy. It simply received the information. "You stopped for me," he said, "when no one else did." "There were other people on that street," she said. "They kept walking." "Yes," he said. "They did." He looked at the stone garden through the glass for a moment. "I want to help you, Adiz. I want to pay for your mother's treatment, fully, indefinitely. And I want to offer you a different job. My household requires someone with your capabilities. The pay would be significantly more than what you currently earn." She looked at him for a long time. "Why?" she said. "Because I am in a position to do this and I choose to," he said. "And because I believe people who act with integrity deserve to stand in better circumstances." She was still looking at him. "I don't know you," she said. "I don't know how you earn your money. I don't know what this job would actually involve." He met her eyes. "Those are the right questions," he said. "Ask them." She did not accept immediately. She told him she needed time, a week, and she used that week the way she used every resource available to her, carefully. She searched his name. Park Joon-ho. There was not much that came up easily. A few references in business directories, a connection to a holding company called PJ Capital, one very old newspaper photograph from what appeared to be a government infrastructure event in the early 2000s. Nothing that explained the house, the driver, the precision with which two people had apparently found her personal phone number within 48 hours. She called her cousin Chukwemeka in Lagos, who had lived in Seoul for several years before returning to Nigeria and who had always told her to call if she needed to understand something about the city's hidden structures. She described what she knew. Chukwemeka was quiet for longer than usual. Then he said, "Adiz, be careful." He said the name Park Joon-ho was known in certain communities not for what was printed anywhere, but for what was understood. He did not elaborate beyond that. He said, "If you go with your eyes open." She thought about her mother. She thought about the quarterly hospital reviews, the medication costs, the messages her sister sent that always began cheerfully and ended carefully. She thought about herself at the window on the 16th floor, in the year she had first arrived, finding Seoul beautiful before she stopped letting herself. She called Han Suk. She said she would accept. The job was described to her as household management, coordination of domestic staff, management of Mr. Park's daily schedule, correspondence handling, and what Han Suk called general administrative support. She would live on-site if she chose in a self-contained apartment at the back of the property, or commute if she preferred. She chose to commute at first, keeping her small rented room in Sindang. She started on a Monday. The household was quiet and well-ordered. There were 4 other staff, a driver named Taeyong, a cook named Mrs. Oh, a gardener who came twice weekly, and Han Suk himself, who served as a general aide and never seemed to stop working. No one spoke to her unkindly. No one was warm in a way that felt casual either. They were all professional in the way that suggested they had learned not to ask questions and to do their work completely. Mr. Park was a demanding employer in the best sense, clear about expectations, consistent and fair. He gave precise instructions and did not repeat himself. He worked from home most days, receiving visitors in the formal room at the front of the house, going out only 2 or 3 times a week in the black car with Taeyong. He ate simply, walked in the garden in the morning, read in the evenings. He was nothing like she had feared he would be. And yet, there were visitors who came in the early evenings, always arriving after dark, always shown in by Han Suk rather than announced. Men who were never introduced to her. Men who moved through the house with the particular confidence of people accustomed to rooms where decisions were made. One of them, a heavy-set man with gray at his temples, looked at her the first time he passed her in the hallway with an expression she recognized. The expression of someone calculating a person's significance and finding it low enough to ignore. She kept her face still and continued carrying the files she was moving. 3 weeks into the job, she found in a drawer she opened looking for a printer cartridge, a small black notebook. She opened it. She should not have. She knew immediately from the first 2 pages that she should not have. She closed it and put it back and stood at the desk for a moment, breathing slowly. Then she went to make Mr. Park his afternoon tea and she carried it to him and she set it down and she looked at him across the low table. "I opened a drawer in the study by mistake," she said. "I found a black notebook." He looked up from his papers. He was very still. "I closed it," she said. "I put it back." He looked at her for a long moment. "And now you are telling me," he said. "Yes," she said. "Why not just say nothing?" "Because you asked me the right questions the first day," she said. "I thought we were going to be honest with each other." The silence stretched. Outside, the gardener's shears moved against the hedge in a slow rhythm. "Sit down," Mr. Park said. He did not explain everything. She understood that he would not, and she did not ask him to. What he told her was this. He was a man who had spent 40 years building something that could not be dismantled cleanly. He had started in circumstances she could not imagine, in a Korea she had only read about in history, and he had made choices that had kept him and people he loved alive. Some of those choices had required him to exist in structures that operated outside the lines of what was legal. He was not proud of all of it. He was not ashamed of all of it either. He was simply honest in the precise way of a man who had stopped performing for audiences long ago. "Are you still in those structures?" she asked. "I am trying to leave them," he said. "It is not a simple process." She thought about this. "The men who come in the evenings," she said. "Some of them are allies," he said. "Some of them are watching to see if I am leaving or pretending to leave. There is a difference in how you manage those 2 groups." "And the notebook?" "A record," he said. Insurance if you want a plain word for it. She looked at her hands. She looked at him. I am not in danger by working here, she said. It was not quite a question. Not as long as they believe you are simply household staff, he said. Which is what you are. He paused. But I want you to know where you are standing. You deserve that. She appreciated that he did not soften it. She sat with it for a day, slept with it for a night, and came back the next morning and continued working. She had made a decision. She would stay. She would do her job. She would not involve herself in what she had not been asked to involve herself in. She would keep her eyes open and her hands clean. What she had not calculated was the possibility that the two things she was trying to keep separate would find each other. The trouble began in the 5th week. She arrived one morning to find Han-suk standing in the kitchen doorway with a controlled expression that she had learned to read as the surface over something serious. He told her Mr. Park had received a message overnight and would not be taking his walk that morning. He was in the formal room. He was not to be disturbed. She went about her work. Mid-morning she was in the upstairs corridor when she heard raised voices below, rare enough in that house to stop her completely. She did not move closer. She did not listen deliberately. But the house was old and its acoustics were strange, and she heard enough to know that one of the voices belonged to the heavy-set man she had seen in the hallway weeks before, and that the word being used most often was transfer, in English, not Korean, and that the conversation ended not with agreement but with a silence that was somehow louder than the arguing. That afternoon she was asked by Han-suk to prepare a set of documents for scanning and filing. She worked through them systematically as she always did. 3 pages from the bottom of the stack, she found something that was not a household document. She recognized the format, a bank instruction form, partially completed, with a figure on it that made her set the page down on the desk and look at the wall for a moment. She brought the document to Mr. Park. He looked at it. His face changed in a way she had not seen before, not anger but something colder and more deliberate. He asked her where she had found it. She told him. It wasn't meant to be in that stack, he said almost to himself. No, she said. I didn't think so. He looked at her. Someone put it there for you to find, he said. Or for someone else to find and report. She understood what he was saying. The document had been planted, either as a message to him through her, or as a trap, something that could be used later to say she had been accessing financial records. She was the variable. She was the one with no history in this city, no connections, no protection. If something needed a face to attach blame to, hers was available. She felt a coldness settle in her chest. Not panic, she had not come to Seoul to panic, but a clear-eyed understanding of how exposed she was. What do I do? She asked. Nothing, he said. Not yet. Go home tonight. Act normally. Tell no one. She went home. She did not sleep well. She lay in her small room in Sindang and thought about her mother, whose latest report from the hospital in Enugu had come in that week and said that the new medication was working, that her numbers were better, that her sister had said she was eating more. She thought about what it had cost to get to that sentence. She thought about what it would cost to lose it. She got up before dawn, made tea, and sat at her small table and thought through every option available to her with the same methodical mind that had carried her through 4 years of biochemistry. By the time the sun came up over Sindang she had a plan. It was not a large plan. It was the plan of someone with very few resources and a great deal of discipline, which is often the most effective kind. She went in the next morning and did not change a single thing about how she moved through the house. She answered emails, coordinated a delivery, made Mr. Park's tea, reviewed a maintenance schedule with Mrs. O. She was unremarkable. She was, to anyone watching, simply the African woman who managed the household and asked precise questions about logistics. What she was doing behind that surface was watching. She noticed that Han-suk was distracted in a way that was new, small things, answering his phone in the corridor instead of his office, taking longer to respond to her messages. She noticed that Taeyong had driven out twice without any appointment on the schedule she maintained. She noticed that the heavy-set man, whose name she had learned by listening carefully was Choi Byung-soo, had called the house directly twice, bypassing Han-suk entirely, which was not protocol. She did not write any of this down. She held it. On the 3rd day she asked Mr. Park, during a quiet moment after lunch, a question she had been building toward. Is there anyone in this house, she said, who you are not certain about? He looked at her for a long time. What have you noticed? He said. She told him what she had noticed. She was careful. She was not accusing, she was reporting observations, the way she would report a discrepancy in a supply order. She laid out what she had seen and left the interpretation to him. He listened without interrupting, which was something she had noticed about him from the beginning. He listened as if the information was the only thing in the room. When she finished, he was quiet. Then he said, "Han Suk has been with me for 7 years." "I know," she said. She did not say anything else. He stood and went to the window. The garden was very green in the afternoon light. He stood there for a while. She waited. "If you are right," he said slowly, "then I have been more vulnerable than I thought for longer than I thought." He paused. "And you found this in 3 weeks?" "I notice things," she said simply. "Yes," he said. "You do." He told her that evening, through a message delivered not by Han Suk but by Taeyang, that there would be a small gathering at the house in 2 nights. It was not unusual, he received people regularly. But this gathering had a specific purpose and he wanted her present. Not as staff. As a witness. The gathering was 6 people, including Mr. Park. They sat in the formal room. Adiz sat at a small desk near the door where she had been placed by Mr. Park himself, ostensibly to take notes. Choi Byung-soo was there, settled into his chair with the ease of someone who believed he controlled the room. Han Suk stood near the wall. 2 other men she did not know sat to one side, watching. The conversation was in Korean, moving too fast for her to follow entirely, but she had asked Mr. Park before the meeting to give her the points she needed to understand, and he had, in brief, precise sentences. So she knew the shape of what was happening even when she missed the specific words. Choi Byung-soo was pressuring Mr. Park to authorize a fund transfer as part of what he was calling a final settlement, a disbursement that would, in the language being used, represent Mr. Park's official exit from the organization. It sounded clean. It was not clean. The figure was enormous, and the account it was directed to was, as Mr. Park had explained to her the previous night, not a settlement account but a personal one controlled by Choi himself. It was not an exit. It was a stripping. Mr. Park listened to everything Choi said with his hands folded in his lap and his face showing nothing. Then he said in Korean that she followed clearly because he was speaking slowly and deliberately, "Before we proceed, I would like my administrator to read aloud the document she found in the filing stack last week." Silence. She reached into the folder she was holding and read the document, the bank instruction form, the figure, the account number. Her Korean was imperfect but adequate. She read it precisely. She did not look up. When she finished, the silence in the room had a different quality. Choi Byung-soo's face had done something that he immediately corrected, but not before 3 people saw it. "That document," Mr. Park said quietly, "was planted for a purpose. What that purpose was, I think we all understand now." The 2 men on the side who had said nothing until that moment exchanged a look. One of them spoke. She caught the word for explain, and the word for account. He was asking Choi to explain whose account it was. Choi began speaking quickly. She did not follow all of it. She did not need to. She watched Han Suk's face, which had gone completely blank in the particular way of someone who knows they have been exposed and is calculating their next move. She watched him reach into his jacket pocket, and then stop because Taeyang, who had been standing behind her near the door the whole time, moved forward and put a hand on his shoulder. Taeyang, she realized, had not been a question at all. Taeyang had been the answer Mr. Park had trusted. What followed happened in a register she was not privy to, which was appropriate. She left the formal room that night and let the world she had briefly stood inside close back around its own business. She knew there were consequences for Choi Byung-soo and for Han Suk that she would not be told about in detail, and she did not ask. She was not naive. She understood that the justice inside that world moved by its own rules, not the ones printed in law books. She had chosen to be a witness, not a participant, and she held that line. What she did not expect was the aftermath on her own side of things. 2 days after the gathering, a man came to her room in Sindang. Not from Mr. Park's household. A stranger, well-dressed, who waited in the narrow stairwell of her building as she came up with groceries and said her name very calmly. He told her he knew what she had done. He told her she should understand that Choi Byung-soo had people whose loyalty was transactional rather than personal, and that some of those people were wondering about the African woman who had walked into a room and read a document aloud. She stood very still with her grocery bags. "Are you threatening me?" she said. "I am informing you," he said. "There is a difference." "There isn't," she said. "Goodbye." She went inside, locked her door and called Mr. Park's direct line, not Han Suk's, which no longer existed in her phone. Mr. Park answered on the second ring. She told him what had happened, exactly and without embellishment, including the man's description. Mr. Park said, "I am sorry. This was my failure to contain, not yours." "I know," she said. "What do I do?" He said, "Come here." Tonight. Bring only what you need for a week. She packed a bag. She thought about her mother, as she always did when things became difficult, not as a reason to be afraid but as a reason to stay precise. She took the last bus to the neighborhood with the wide streets and the trees, and she arrived at the house just after 10. Mrs. O had made food. Taeyong took her bag to the apartment at the back of the property. Mr. Park met her in the kitchen and poured her tea and sat with her without speaking for a while, which was more comforting than anything he could have said. "You knew," she said eventually, "when you hired me that something like this might happen." "I knew it was a possibility," he said. "I did not know it would happen. I did not want it to happen." "And the apartment at the back," she said. "You suggested it from the beginning." "Yes," he said. "Because I knew that if you were here, you were visible to me. And I could make sure you were safe." He paused. "I should have explained this to you clearly at the start." "Yes," she said. "You should have." He accepted that without deflection. "My mother's treatment," she said. "Continues," he said. "Unconditionally. That was never a negotiation." She drank her tea. Outside the stone garden was dark and still. "Tell me something true," she said. "Is it over?" He looked at the table. "Choi is neutralized," he said. "The people loyal to him are being managed. The man who came to your building tonight has been identified. He will not be returning. Will I be able to go back to Sindang eventually?" "Yes," he said. "But not yet." She nodded. She finished her tea and went to the apartment at the back of the property, which was small and clean and had a window that looked out at the garden. She sat on the edge of the bed and she felt for the first time in a long while, the full weight of everything. The cleaning job, the rainy night, the notebook, the document, the meeting, the man in the stairwell. She felt all of it and she did not fall under it. She sat with it until it became quiet, and then she lay down and slept. A month passed. Then another. The man from the stairwell was never seen again. The atmosphere at the house changed in the way that enclosed spaces change when the thing causing pressure is removed, slowly, in small degrees, like air returning to a room that has been sealed. Mrs. O began humming in the kitchen again. Taeyong drove with his windows down. Even the stone garden seemed lighter, though she knew that was her own mood finding shapes in things. She moved back to Sindang after 6 weeks. Mr. Park sent Taeyong with her and had a new lock fitted on her apartment door without being asked. She resumed her routine, not the cleaning job which she had left, but a new position at a small medical research administrative office near Mapo that Mr. Park's network had connected her to, work that used her education for the first time since she had arrived in Seoul. She went to Mr. Park's house 3 days a week. She sat at a proper desk now, in the study, doing real administrative work with a clear role and a contract that was registered with a legitimate company. She called her mother every Sunday. Her mother's voice had changed over the months, stronger, more rested, the fear that had lived in it for years slowly releasing. Her sister sent a photo of their mother sitting in the yard of their house in Enugu, in the afternoon sun, looking at the camera with the particular expression of someone who has decided to keep living. Adiz saved that photo and looked at it on days when she needed to remember why she had made the choices she had made. One morning in autumn she was working in the study when Mr. Park came in and sat across from her. He set a small envelope on the desk without explanation. She opened it. Inside was a formal letter and behind it a bank document. She read the letter first. It was from a foundation, the Park Foundation, registered and legitimate, establishing a medical education scholarship in her name, funded annually for young Nigerians pursuing science education. Her name was attached to it as the founding instance. Not a beneficiary. A model. She looked at the document for a long time. Then she looked at him. "You didn't ask me," she said. "No," he said. "I should have. Do you object?" She thought about it. "No," she said. "Good." He folded his hands. "You came to Seoul to survive. You stayed to send money home. You helped a stranger in the rain because it was the right thing to do. And then you held your line in a room full of people who have spent their whole lives making other people bend." He paused. "That deserves to be recorded somewhere. It counts." She did not respond immediately. She looked out at the stone garden, which had turned amber and brown with the season, the leaves collecting in the corners of the path. She thought about the woman she had been 2 years ago, standing at that window on the 16th floor, finding Seoul beautiful before she trained herself to stop. She was going to let herself find it beautiful again. "Thank you," she said. "Not for the scholarship exactly. For all of it. For the sharp eyes in the rain, for the honest conversation, for the tea on difficult nights." He nodded once, the way he nodded when a thing was settled between two people who understood each other. She went back to her work. He went back to his. The garden held the autumn light between them like something that had always been there. Kindness does not ask for a worthy recipient. It only asks for a willing hand. Adiz did not stop in the rain because she knew who the old man was. She stopped because she was the kind of person who stopped. That is the only credential kindness requires. But integrity compounds. When she found the notebook, she spoke. When she found the document, she spoke again. When the room full of powerful men needed a clear voice, she was ready because she had practiced being ready in every small moment before that one. The world will not always reward good character immediately or directly or without cost. But character is not built in the large moments, it is revealed there. It is built in every Tuesday night when no one is watching and a woman in a rain-soaked doorway decides that another person's life matters enough to make her stop.